Today, I have with me Stan Miller. Stan Miller is the international best-selling author of Your American Legacy. Right there. Stan creates powerful strategies that instill lasting values for generations. So Stan has got a background in not only wealth advising, but estate planning as well. But Stan, let's hear from your words. What's your background? What brought you to this point?
So, Greg, I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. This is terrific. I love talking to business owners because at the end of the day, although I'm a lawyer, really and truly, I'm really a businessman. That's what I do. I'm really an entrepreneur. But I've been an estate planning attorney for, I don't do the math anymore. It's been a long time. But one of the frustrations that I've had in all the years of my practice is frequently I would get into conversations, really intense, in-depth conversations with clients who would have who showed me a real passionate desire to make an impact on their family in a way so that after they were gone, their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren would be good citizens contributing to making the world a better place. And that subject does come up often in estate planning, because when people sit down with estate planners, they're thinking about mortality, right? This is not like going to the supermarket and buying groceries. They're having a conversation with me about that recognizes that they're mortal and they're not going to be here forever. And so the window of opportunity is open for us to reflect on and think about those issues. And I have just been over the years so frustrated because I would hear this desire, this passion from clients, but I had no solutions to offer for that. I could offer taxes and all those kinds of things. Avoid probate. We've done thousands of living trusts in our practice. But to find a solution for how do you systematically take steps that give you the confidence that you're really building the next generation and as people that will be contributors. So what prompted me to write the book was I wanted to find a set of solutions for that. And I've assumed the solutions are there. It was just my task to discover them. And so I did that. And in the book, I developed a framework. Now, I will say this, there's nothing quite like writing a book to cause you to really reflect on things. How do you put it in a framework that allows you to communicate it effectively to other people? So out of the process, which took, I want to say, 3 or 4 years really of work with myself and my wife, there was a period of about 2 years where we couldn't have company over and use the dining room because I had the whole dining room laid out with all the research materials. But through that process, I came up with a framework that I represented in a pyramid that's in the book that essentially says the planning work that we do with clients, and I'm speaking now to not just attorneys who do estate planning, but also financial advisors and insurance advisors. Really good planning, in my view, requires a solid financial foundation. You gotta have a solid business plan for your business. You gotta have a financial plan, because if you're going hungry, not much else is going to be important. You've also got to have a good legal and tax plan so that you minimize taxes as best you can, keep things out of probate, and structure it so that what you have is managed by the people that you choose and ultimately passes to the right people. But those are the two foundational pieces. And when those pieces are done, most people think the job is done. And the position I take is that's really when the fun begins, because that's when that third element, that legacy dimension, gets added. And in the book, I laid out a number of chapters, I would say, a series of different actionable strategies that families can enter into that I think really work to effectively transmit values that matter.
So at what point in time, so there's a lot of business people out there, people that are thinking about getting into business, people that are already in business for themselves, thinking about expanding.
Right.
At what point in time do they start making these plans or doing these arrangements after they've been in business for a little while, before they start a business, while they're looking at a business?
Well, no, I think, I think if you have a family, if you have a spouse, and especially if you have children, you've got a plan for that, and if you're young and you don't have assets, you're probably pretty healthy. I'm a zealous, almost to the point of being obnoxious advocate that young people who have children or who pretty sure they're going to have children need to have a bunch of term life insurance just in case they die before they have wealth. You need to have that in place. You need to have that in place because when you get in business, you're probably going to have debt, and you need to figure out a way to have that debt paid off. If you die, you don't want to have your spouse stuck with that. And you want to know that your spouse is not going to have to go out and suddenly find a new spouse to be able to put food on the table. You want to know that your kid's college is taken care of. So that is a really inexpensive solution that comes in at the front end. And having that in place means that your family's financial viability over time is not contingent on the success of the business. When you're in business for a while and the business begins to develop momentum and develop value, at that point, then you have a different set of issues. If you have partners, you have to think about buy-sell agreements so that if you die or your partner dies, you've got a way out of that relationship that makes it as easy as it can be and avoids conflict with families. And then you have to think about, at some point, you have to think about the estate tax issue. That is less of an issue today than it was once upon a time, because now the estate tax exemption is $12 million a person. But there's a bit of an illusion in that because the law is going to change in 2026. The law is not going to change. What's going to happen is that the exemption under the current law is going to be cut in half to a number that's going to be approximately $6 million per person. And for that not to happen, they'll have to change the law to make that not happen. So the exemption is going to be a much lower number. And there are a lot of folks out there, a lot of business owners that have businesses that are growing, that by 2026 will push them up into a state taxable territory. And there are a lot of planning opportunities available now while we still have this $12 million per person exemption that will go away whenever it gets cut in half. So, there's all that to think about as business owners. And then you also have to think about, as a business owner, at some point, this doesn't get thought about a lot. Business owners are way better at getting into businesses than they are at getting out of them. So there are lots of people that, get excited and enthusiastic in getting into a business, but they really have no exit plan. And so one of the things that we see is one of the opportunities, at least in our space, is to be able to sit down with people that have created a successful business and figure out then, how do I transition that business so that the business owner is able to monetize that value. Otherwise, you just die with your boots on and nobody gets it. They close the doors, sell the equipment, and you're done. But ideally, you would like, I think, most of our clients who are business owners, we have a lot of business owner clients, what they would like to be able to do is, at some point in their life, find a buyer for that business and cash out in a way that allows them to live the lifestyle that they want from the investment income that they derive from the sale of the business. And that can be done, but that also requires some advanced planning. I've said to clients many times that if you want to land an airplane, you don't think about that when you're on top of the airport. You have to think about that when you're 60 or 80 miles out, right? And so thinking about how to exit your business is something that needs to become part of the thought process 4 or 5 years before the date that you'd really like to be out. There aren't that many ways out of a business. And a lot of times the way out is to have a family member take over. And then you've got to think about, how am I going to be fair to the other family members? And there's a whole conversation around that. A lot of times the person that's going to take over the business is going to be an employee. And how do you get that ownership transferred to that employee? Because almost without exception, that employee does not have the money to buy it from you and does not have the wherewithal to get a bank to loan the money to buy it from you. So we have to think about some strategies that generally speaking allow us to do this in kind of baby steps, so that over a period of 4 or 5, maybe 7 years, we're able to get out of the business. Because what we want to do is to get out of the business and have the money, and not have the person that has the business now owe us any money. That puts us in the worst of all possible scenarios, right? Because now you don't have control over the business, but we're dependent on the guy who is in control of the business having the wherewithal to pay us. And if he can't do it, now our lifestyle is jeopardized. And so I just encourage clients to not be the bank. Now, let the bank do their job. Let the bank be the lender, and let's take the money, let's invest that, and live off of that, and be able to drive by the business and talk to the new owner and cheer him on and take him out to dinner occasionally and empathize with the struggles he's having, but not have my lifestyle dependent on whether or not he's successful in that business or not.
Perfect. So a lot of different ways to protect the income, have a plan for exiting. One of the things I always talk to my people about is, what is your exit plan even before they get into a business? So, and you've outlined it there. Know what to do when you're going to leave it. Exactly.
Yep.
Now you've got a few other interesting chapters in your book that I noticed as well. So one of them is define values that matter. Go into that a little bit if you don't mind.
Well, not everybody shares the same values. If you want to leave a legacy, if you want to leave younger generation family members that are fully empowered to be successful in the world, you want to make sure they have the values that from your own life experience work for you. I look at values. I think of values as really kind of like the software system in a human. If I take this laptop that I'm talking to you on, and I put early generation primitive software, this computer does not function very effectively. But if I have the latest technology, the best software, this computer is more effective. It does more, it does more things. Your value system is the software that empowers humans, individuals, and families to function. And so I think a good example of that is a value that most of us share, I think, and that is the importance of integrity. Integrity is a value, and I don't want to get religious about it. I'm just saying that we all know people who lack it, and we look at their lives, and what we see is these are people who do not function effectively. Their relationships are damaged. Even the success they have is almost invariably very short-lived. Their lives just don't work. Their marriage relationships don't work. They don't have a relationship with their children. People don't trust them in business. People who lack integrity don't function. So I'm just saying, think of it as software. If you want to have your kid be successful in the world, one of the things you want to do is make sure that she understands the importance of integrity. I have a lot of clients for whom work ethic is a huge value. And in the book, I have a list of, like 100 values. And I encourage people to go through there and circle, the 4 or 5 values that really float to the surface, be really significant for them. And usually what I find is that those values have some historical root. They have there's some connection they have to a parent, an uncle, some family member, some earlier life experience where they experience that value in a really positive way, or where they experience that value in a profoundly negative way. They saw that relative who lacked integrity or who had drug or alcohol issues, who a guy who was fundamentally dishonest, and they got to watch this as a child growing up, and they said, you know what, I don't be like that guy. So the value that's important is what we've learned from those experiences, and so I think part of my process is to have people spend a little time just identifying the values that are most important to them, and then in the process of that, connecting to the stories in their life where they derive that life experience. And I tell some of those stories in my book about people that have been influential to me. One of the things I'll tell you that we're doing now, my wife and I just moved to a new home. It's not a brand new home, but it's new to us. And we're in the process now of decorating. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm getting photographs of people that represent the values that I think really matter. I'm going to have a picture of my father up there. I have an uncle that was profoundly influential on me. I'm going to put Abraham Lincoln up there. I'm putting Dwight Eisenhower up there too. He's one of my heroes. And I've got some others, but I'm putting those pictures on the wall so that when one of these days, whenever we have grandkids, which we think is like a possibility, my son's engaged now. I want to be able to take that kid in there and have him ask me, who's that? Why is he there? And I want to be able to tell the story of why that person's on my wall. Okay.
Excellent.
Because I think identifying models and connecting to the stories of what those people did and why it mattered and what impact it had in the world, it has a profound influence. And particularly if it's family members, being able to capture those stories and preserve them so they're not lost. And stories do get lost now. Families are dispersed, they move away and the stories are lost forever. And all that value that could have been so powerful and so compelling is just not there. It's not accessible. So we encourage people to identify the stories, get them written down, get them recorded so that they're preserved in a way that can be passed on and can be influential in the lives of people that aren't even born yet.
That's another chapter in your book is keeping those family stories alive. Yep.
Yeah, that's a really big deal. That, family heirlooms are important too. There's so many ways that you can take tangible things that may not really have much economic value and pass them on in ways that really carry just a whole bundle of information that's impactful. Also, and what I've started doing now is I've become a big advocate of encouraging families, if they don't have traditions, to invent some. And you can do that. You can do that. But I'll tell you, I am convinced that rituals and traditions are the most powerful value transmitters. When you sit down at Thanksgiving, that represents just a compelling opportunity to underscore the importance of generosity, of being proactively generous in the world, to be grateful. And I think celebrating that with pumpkin pie, whatever it is that you do. I think those traditions, if you're Jewish and you go to Shabbat on Friday night, the Jews have been doing that for, many millennia. And I believe that one of the reasons that despite all of the, all of the tragedies that the Jewish people have incurred, Judaism continues to survive because these rituals are compelling and powerful. People connect around the story, the food, the readings, the sayings, the scriptures, all done in a way that connects you emotionally with who you are. And so if you come from a family that doesn't have those traditions, you don't have to wait. I think you can create them. I have a friend who just completely made up a whole set of family traditions just out of his imagination and began to implement it, and the family bought into it.
That's perfect. So the book is more, when you're creating a legacy, it's more than just about making money, more than just about creating financial wealth. It's the whole thing, and it encompasses your whole life. Not only creating that wealth so that you don't have to worry about it, the protection there, but also creating that family element and preserving those legacies as well. So it's about your whole life story, putting everything together.
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect.
And let me just say one other thing I would just say. One of the things that I have really become a serious advocate of is I encourage every family that I sit down with to create some version of their own family charity. And this is so easy to do. You can go down to the local community foundation, wherever you live, and set up a donor advised fund for really modest amounts of money. There are no legal fees in setting it up. There's no tax returns to file. There's no maintenance in it. But what I love to see families do is to make a contribution, not at death, not when you die, you leave it. I'm saying create it. Sit at the kitchen table and develop a mission statement. I think it's a fair question to say to the kids, look, we've just made a contribution to our family fund, our family endowment fund down at the community foundation. So tonight we're going to have a conversation about what this family, our family, what we mean to this community and what kind of impact we want to have on the community and on the world, and invite everybody around the table to weigh in and to truly engage on that, build some rituals around these meetings and set it up so that every time you have a teenager, who's 13 or 14, let them know a year ahead of time, you're coming to the next meeting and you're going to be expected to come with ideas about how you want to make the world better, because we have some money here and we're going to write some checks. We're going to send money out to people to things that can make an impact on the world, and we want you involved and engaged in that. I'm just so convinced that proactively and systematically engaging in acts of generosity are it's just the single most powerful tool to positively influence younger generation family members. And I can tell you from my own experience at having done this, it is far and away the most fun you're ever going to have with the kids. I mean, you see them in a different way. They see you in a different way. And now the focus on this conversation is not about what's in it for me, how much am I going to get out of this? It is 100% focused on how are we as a family going to make the world better? And we're going to do it together. And I'm just convinced that when families proactively introduce that idea into family life, it is transformative.
I agree completely. That is absolutely amazing. Great book, by the way. Y'all got to get that book, read that. A lot of other good chapters in there as well that we can go on for hours and talk about that, creating your family brand, which is kind of what we alluded to there, and just going on with that legacy of not only creating a good business for yourself, but just a good family values, good family traditions, so that your entire life is just well spent.
And Greg, I'll say just as a closing point, if you don't like to read books, we recorded it. I say we, my wife and I recorded. The book is read by myself and my wife. We did it together.
How cool is that? I'll have to check that one out too. But yeah, I've already reading the book, but that's good. So, a lot of people, you're out there driving around, going to work on a regular basis, get that book and just listen to it. I know when I was working in the corporate world, I had an hour drive to work every day and I listened to all sorts of different books. So good way to do it. That is awesome, Stan. Appreciate it.
Well, Greg, I thank you very much for the opportunity to spend this time with you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Stan. I appreciate your time as well. Enjoy your day out there.